Welcome to Crossover the Pond, brought to you by 21 Media Productions and Sports Social. He's Drew Lasker, I'm Josh Sexton. This is another episode back this side of the pond now. The last pod I should say, that me and Drew recorded was a bit of a reaction special. I was still on the road, just finding my way back to Liverpool here, but back where it all started, Crossover the Pond for me, back in my office here. Drew is still over the pond, crossing over still, just about in Texas. Drew, how have you been for the past few weeks without really anything big besides LeBron, NBA basketball-wise, to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I was just telling, I'm in my buddies now. I'm in Galveston, Texas, the place that Charles Barkley despises, and I was just telling, I was just telling him that the NBA has just completely dominated the offseason, where the NFL here in America is like, what soccer is in the UK or Europe. But I haven't heard anything about the NFL because the NBA has just dominated every single headline possible. And even if it's not a big story, it's small stories around the edges. Obviously, since LeBron James finally made his decision, there's some other business that has needed to get taken care of around the NBA, which we'll talk about today.
Yeah, and we promised on the last podcast that we'd do a little bit of a deeper dive into the sort of pros and cons, I guess, of the LeBron James move. We explored a couple of those, maybe more you on the pros side, because I can tell it's definitely a move that you've liked a little bit more than I have. It's a move that I've definitely warmed a little bit more towards as the days have gone on as well. So I wanted to kind of take both sides of that from both of our perspectives. And then, of course, there's been, little bits of housekeeping from there of other teams. It was reported a good few weeks ago that Draymond Green had kind of been, waiting to see what the Golden State Warriors would do in regards to LeBron, and then he'd take a team-friendly deal as he was trying to persuade LeBron James to come to the team. Apparently, they were playing golf every day, according to what Bill Simmons and Zach Lowe have been saying on the podcast the last few weeks. So, unfortunately, Draymond's pitch didn't work, but he can soothe himself with a cool 27 million for this season coming up. So we'll get into that a little bit as well. And then any other moves that are kind of going on around the NBA at the moment, including OKC Thunder squeezing Denver a few days before a little bit of a deadline around Spencer Jones's extension there. But we'll start with LeBron James, Drew, because it does feel like it's the domino that affects all else. I mean, it literally affects the schedule if you are Adam Silver, and exploring more of these pros and cons about the move. I think at the time I was maybe a little bit harsh on the defense side of things and the basketball fit side of things. You'd mentioned on the last podcast that these guys are all too good at basketball. Besides VJ Edgecombe, they're all kind of in their peak years or have come through their peak years and are all too experienced in the NBA world not to kind of make this work. And I completely agree with you in that sense in terms of the offensive side of the ball, but I've kind of talked myself into the defensive side of the ball a little bit more in the last few days as well, just on the basis of, I think it was actually something that was said maybe on the Zach Lowe show in the last few days, that like, what about this team feels like it got much worse than how good Philly's defense was last season. And I kind of almost scratched my head at that and was like, oh yeah, that's fair, because I don't think Jaylen Brown is a bad defender. If anything, I'd say Jaylen Brown is a plus defender. I think even in LeBron's declining years, there's enough around him there. Even if Joel Embiid doesn't play really, like if it's Ariel Hook-Porty that comes into the game, where we saw he can be a plus defender at times with New York last season too. There's other guys in and around that. Dean Wade, I think, is a relative plus of a defender at the power forward, or maybe sort of 3 to 3.5 position. So I just think there's enough there for Philly to get by defensively now. And then, as you say, the offensive talents of everyone just too high level, really, for them not to be able to figure this out on terms of the basketball fit.
Yeah, the Philadelphia 76ers defense will be their offense because good luck trying to stop them. I would not be surprised if they led the league in scoring next year. And if they're averaging, I believe the league average last year was 116, if I can remember on the top of my head. And I think Denver was number one. But if you're telling me that this team is going to average 125, 130 points, it's going to put pressure on every other team offense to make sure that you keep scoring, right? I mean, defensively, are they a juggernaut? No, but I think Jaylen Brown is one of those guys that will take a challenge on the other team's best player. Maxi, even though he's small, he does it a little bit different. He's like one of those gnat that gets all up in you. He's disruptive. He gets in the passing lanes. VJ, we know about his competitiveness on this side. And if Embiid just lateral movement can just improve slightly, then you can funnel all of that traffic down to him, sort of like what San Antonio does for Wemby, and it was talked about that Embiid, this is the first off season he's going into in a very long time without any surgery. So he's been able to focus on just working on his game and keeping health. And then LeBron as well. We see a lot of things on social media. We know his defense isn't the same what it was during the Miami Heat days, but think about what he's going to be asked to do now. He's not going to be asked to guard the other team's best player. He's not going to be asked to guard a wiggly guard. Remember, he's plugged in at the four positionally. What are fours in the NBA? Porzingis, guys that stretch out the top of the key and can make shots. There are not a lot of fours that put the ball on the floor. So I think that kind of fits him well as long as he doesn't get lost on the weak side. All he has to do is make sure he closes out properly. And when you look at all of that, there's no concern defensively with Philadelphia from that standpoint. I mean, you look at the team that won the NBA Finals, New York Knicks. I'm not exactly sure where they finished up in the ranking, but I don't believe it was a top five. So at that level, when you got that type of offense, it's really about making sure you're able to get timely stops. And what do I mean by that is that those stops where it's just on the cusp where a team can get on a run. Those are timely stops. And if you can get in a position to be able to buckle down and keep teams from going on heavy runs, then that is a championship defensive team. So when you look at all those things, I think Philadelphia's defense will be their offense.
Yeah, and a great challenge for Nick Nurse to figure out too. And we're already sort of hearing about, potential tweaks, at least offensively, that Nick Nurse may look to make with this new look lineup. Shams Charania putting out a couple of days ago now that there's a report going around the league at least that Nick Nurse is planning to give LeBron James some playing time at the point guard position. And like you, Drew, I think you said this in the last episode. I don't find that wholly surprising. I think that a lot of Maxi's good work does kind of happen off ball. He's not one of these like heavy isolation guards. He's good at cutting to the basket, good at playing at pace. And that's the other thing for me is like how well this team are now going to be able to play at pace. Like one of the things that, fans have kind of labeled at Jaylen Brown really when they're, trying to be critical of him in his fit in this lineup or just him in the move to the Philadelphia 76 in general is there was a tweet that was going around of like, oh, you managed to stop, X and Y, whatever pick and roll it was. Well, here's a Jaylen Brown tween. Listen, you don't want to get Jaylen Brown in half court offense more often than not if you're a defender, because Jaylen Brown is someone who can still get to his spots and someone who can score the ball at will. Really, he is a 3 level scorer for me, and he does that at a high level. But in the full court offense, in terms of fast breaks and things like that, Jaylen Brown can be an absolute demon in that. He's someone who really possesses athleticism, especially around the rim, ferocious dunker, and I think he'll relish that challenge. He'll relish that challenge almost of like, I don't know about you, Drew. Maybe it's simplistic to see, but like I could imagine Joel Embiid being the guy who crashes the defensive glass while everyone else spreads out running across the floor, and then suddenly just basically asking a really highly skilled guy in Joel Embiid to kind of play that like quarterback role that we see Nikola Jokic do for the Denver Nuggets. And then he's got 4 targets to look at, and as I say, with the athleticism of Jaylen Brown, with still mad to say when he's 41 years old, but the athleticism of LeBron James, there's lob threats now all around that court as well. VJ Edgecombe, I would throw into that. I believe he is probably a lob threat with his athleticism. So it just feels like there are so many weapons to this offense that sometimes we can be a little bit simplistic and look at it in terms of just what it looks like when there's one guy at the top of the key and the defense is set. But this is going to be a team that teams are not going to want to turn the ball over against.
The greatest thing that Philadelphia has going for them is versatility. You look at a team like New York who completely shifted how they played the entire season after that Atlanta series. They went from Jalen Brunson, heavy isolations, really ball dominant, to flipping the script on the dime, and then Cat kind of being their initiator offensively, and that is kind of what changed the trajectory for them. And when you think about it, I didn't even think about this initially, but then when I saw the report come out that he will play point guard, I was like, that just makes perfect sense because LeBron, he's always said that he's never been a natural scorer. He just happens to lead the league all time in scoring, but he's always been a fantastic passer. Even when you go and look at his highlights from grade school, like his vision is just incredible. So imagine what Cat did in the playoffs. and you're putting the ball in LeBron James' hand, who is 5 times better than him as a playmaker. And that's what I see LeBron being. LeBron being able to make everyone else's job so much easier. Joel Embiid is going to take a backseat offensively. I think he understands that he's already won his MVP. He's already got his accolades. He wants to win now. So offensively, you don't really need him to do a whole lot. I'd rather his energy be done on the defensive end and making sure he can gobble up rebounds and then pitch out to LeBron, and then LeBron can start that break, and LeBron could be able to pitch it ahead to 3 young thoroughbreds up the floor. And yes, I'm calling Jaylen Brown a thoroughbred even though he's in his 30s. And when the game slows down, that's when they will use Joel Embiid as a safety blanket, be able to dump the ball inside, and then guys can play off of him, dribble handoff actions with Embiid, which he's been so great with Maxi. Weak side cuts, and LeBron. He said this last year when there was some concerns about him and Luka. He was like, I can fit into any system. And he proved that last year. Last year was the least he's ever had the ball in his hands. And what did he do? He just led the league in fast break points as a 41-year-old. So he can evolve. He could play different roles, but having the ball in his hands to start games, to set the tone, and then to finish games off, is Maxi shot 40% on catch and shoots last year. VJ Eshkom, after the playoffs, he said, no one will ever leave me open again. So you have to think that he's been buried in the gym working on his jump shot. Jaylen Brown, I'm not too sure about his catch and shoot stats, but he can make shots. He might need to take a dribble or two, but these are all great players that's going to evolve. And LeBron being at the point guard is just brilliant. I'm glad that they pitched that to him. I never even thought of that, but what a pitch to tell LeBron James, hey, you played the last year and a half with Luka where you just sat and watched a lot. How would you like it if we put the ball back in your hands? And so I'm sure that was a big reason of why he decided to go to Philly. But again, just to sum all of this up, the biggest thing that Philly got going for them is the versatility. They can play multiple different ways. They can shuffle lineups. Caldwell Pope coming there gives them another shooter. We didn't talk about Anthony Simmons. I mean, this is a guy that took a 2-year, $14 million deal. This is a guy that can score 20 points a game when he was in Portland. So, you got your off the bench guys to help as well. It's just a question of just making sure you stay healthy with Philly.
And even more recently than that for Anthony Simons, by the way, like, Bill Simmons and there's other Celtics fans that talk about the idea that, when he was off the team and they brought in Nikola Vucevic, that was kind of like a way of almost dumping that salary. Boston tried to dress it up as like Nikola Vucevic is going to help us in the playoffs here. He's going to be offensively more skilled than an Amir Cater or Luka Garza. But actually, Boston fans saw that as kind of like the beginning of the end of their, dream run that they had last season because Anthony Simons was that good so recently. And I saw an incredible stat the other day, Drew, which I'm sure you'll enjoy as well, that during the regular season that ended up with the bubble, so obviously it wasn't a full 82 game season, but 67 games played by LeBron James that season, and he finished as the top assist getter in the entire league at 10.2 assists per game. So kind of speaks again to what you were saying before about the elite level of playmaker that we're dealing with here, that this is a guy who has an assist title, if an assist title is such a thing to his name, albeit, as I say, in a shortened season. But I've seen a lot of people trying to like make subsequent moves for Philly off the back of this. I don't really see it that way. I see it as Philly have got the roster and especially the starting five that they want now. We've discussed some of the depth pieces there for them as well. And listen, down the line, if it all falls apart and Joel Embiid falls apart again and stuff, maybe then we can start to talk about ways they can get off Joel Embiid and try and almost extend that LeBron James timeline. He's on this 2-year deal, but with LeBron and the way he is, it feels like he could be playing until he's 50 at this stage. He's just a freak of nature, isn't he? So people are trying to do all of those questions and sort of almost get ahead of like any failures at the moment. But I don't know about you, Drew. There is a part of me that's just like really excited to see what this looks like. I think we can all be very like cynical in this world and all be immediately critical of these things, and I think it's also harder when we are partisan sports fans with our own sports teams and interest in this as well. But I don't know, maybe it's that I'm expecting the Clippers to not be a winning team this season. I'm looking forward to seeing what this looks like as a winning team.
And I'm looking at it with realistic eyes. I'm not going to overreact like a lot of time the NBA media does. This championship of buzz. Not really, because you look historically in the NBA, every team that has won had to go through trials and tribulations. You look at the New York Knicks, what happened to them last year? They lost a heartbreaker to Indiana. And so every team, you look at the, 2010 Heatles, Miami lost that series against Dallas. So every team has to go through something before they get to the mountaintop. So just to expect that you're just going to be able to throw this team together and they're going to go out and win it all. I think that's kind of looking at it unfairly. I think that's why you saw it come across the ticker that this is a 2-year deal with the player option for LeBron. He knows he's been in this situation before. He knows that it doesn't happen overnight, and year two is when you're more than likely to win it all. So they just gotta. This year is just about filling each other out. They got everyone on the roster that's gonna come back the next year. If bearing no trades or anything. So, this is a 2-year process in my eyes to get this thing done. It'll be a disappointment in year two, but for year one, it's just about learning one another, finding roles, staying healthy, being competitive, and giving it your best shot. You're almost playing with house money because now the pressure gets moved to San Antonio to have to get it done, not necessarily Philly. And then being in the East as well, even though the East looks completely different than when it looked 6 months ago, is going to be, a bloodbath trying to get out of there. But as we saw in this previous year's playoffs, it's all about matchups. So seeding is not really that important. It's about making sure you get the right matchup. But finally, the thing that I love, just piggybacking off that assist stat that you brought in for LeBron, is that this is how LeBron loves to play. He loves to get out in the open court, pitch the ball ahead, make those home run assists. He just hasn't had the opportunity to do it because in LA, they were one of the top 5 slowest teams in the NBA last year. So when he gets the rebound, which we know he averages as a career for his career 7 rebounds a game, that he can push it on the break, but LA was more of a walk it up team. Think about how this is going to rejuvenate LeBron. There's no better style to play than get out on the break and making those home run passes, kind of looking like the Showtime Lakers.
Yeah, absolutely. There is loads about this that continues to excite me, and a few bits of housekeeping that have sort of come off the back of that now as well. The Sixers trading a second round pick and Johnny Broom, who was one of the guys that I think Sixers fans had been expecting to be off the roster over the coming days, to the LA Clippers. The Clippers just clearly, continuing to hoard draft assets there. And then, as we mentioned at the top of the show, Draymond Green signing his new deal with the Warriors. Um, I, I don't know about you, Drew. There's probably, like, if we're doing like the biggest winners and losers of this offseason, I feel very worried for Golden State Warriors within that conversation. I'm very worried for Golden State Warriors fans, and particularly for me as someone who's a massive, massive Steph Curry fan, particularly worried for Steph and what this looks like for his timeline now because, you bring back Draymond Green, on a 27 million 1 year deal. I understand the sentiment behind that, and I understand that Draymond Green has been such a great servant for the Golden State Warriors, and there's a lot of people who say they'd have loved to have seen them to retire with Clay, I should say, on the Golden State Warriors, and I'd have loved that too. But Clay got traded away when it was clear that his role on the team was not going to be able to contribute towards winning anymore, and it was clear that Clay was quite mutually happy with that decision. I've kind of wondered in the last few years whether Golden State Warriors should have got off the Draymond train because it now brings with it probably more drama off court than it ever did in terms of than it has done in recent years, I should say, in terms of on court contributions. Yes, he had his playing game sort of resurgence against Kawhi Leonard this season, but speaking as someone who obviously watched that game very closely, I don't think Kawhi was really aggressive enough in any way that game. I think he kind of let Draymond punk him in a sense. So if Draymond is getting paid off the strength of one game last season, and we're kind of just forgetting all this stuff that he's been saying about Yaxel Lenderborg over the offseason, all the stuff he's been saying about how Steve Kerr said it's getting hard to defend him publicly anymore. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily worry me as a move, but 27 million makes me worried for the next few moves that Golden State can make when Jimmy Butler's going to be out till probably the end of the season in terms of when he can actually meaningfully contribute to basketball again.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about this deal. It's just a 1-year deal. This is the money that he was owed anyway if he didn't opt out. This was obviously a team player. Thanks for being a team player, Draymond. Here's your reward because he had a player option. He opted out to help give Golden State flexibility to sign LeBron James. And don't think that this was not discussed previously, or a handshake deal in a back alley. And
Of
guess
course.
who is Draymond's agent? Rich Paul. You don't want to be doing bad business with Rich Paul. So trust me, this was a deal that was already predetermined. Hey, opt out, give us some flexibility so we can sign LeBron. If not, you're going to get your money back. However, in my opinion, this is the last year you will see Draymond in the Golden State Warriors jersey. This will be the last time you will see Draymond Green making 20 mil plus. And so this is the end of the road for him. And it's okay because Golden State is playing for absolutely nothing. The owner just came out and said that they're looking towards the future, which is a slap in the face of Steph Curry. So right now, he gets automatically on my trade radar during the season. Don't be surprised if you start seeing rumors heating up throughout the year, because they're not going anywhere with that roster. Remember, Moses Moody tore his knee up in February, March time. You got Yaxel, but he's young. You, you, you got Porzingis, but he's never there. This team is just it's a shell of itself. This is why I'm happy LeBron didn't go there, because I know you wanted to see it, but this was not going to end well. This was a great story. It would have been fun, but this is not a real competitive team. And next year, this time, this team's going to look a lot different. And don't be surprised if Steph Curry and Draymond Green are wearing different uniforms next year. But, I'm glad that Golden State was able to hold their end of the bargain, make sure to take care of Draymond. But this is the end of the road. He will never see a contract like this. And as far as I'm concerned, his numbers in Golden State are numbered.
Yeah, and it feels like the idea of championship contention and that sort of window for those days are number two. I could see him and Steph Curry retiring as Warriors. I'm not sure I could see them being moved away. I know the NBA is a business, and ultimately there are business interests and things to protect here. But I just think Steph is too important to Golden State. You're basically signaling the end of that franchise, really, if they end up trading away Steph Curry. There's so many places that I'm sure would be bowing at the feet of Golden State in terms of giving them a king's ransom to get Steph Curry. I'm looking at the Boston Celtics in particular. I'm sure Celtics fans will be loving to just move that Paul George contract on one more time and pick up Steph Curry there and put them right back in championship contention, and with the ability to challenge that Philadelphia 76ers team that they've kind of inadvertently built this season. But yeah, definitely worried for someone who's a big fan of Steph. I just feel like one of the reasons I wanted LeBron to go there was that LeBron could have lifted that team, and also that it seemed like at first it was contingent on the idea of Anthony Davis going there. I know that was a little bit of, in fact, I was actually editing one of our podcasts we did in Vegas today, Drew, and you were kind of saying that it's like the Expendables. You put these teams of all guys together and they don't really succeed. And of course, I know that better than anybody as a Clippers fan, really, but I don't know that it'd been something quite nice about seeing LeBron reunited with Anthony Davis, and then Steph Curry and him being the Akron kids, and kind of almost like there isn't much of a timeline with Steph Curry that exists in the Golden State Warriors world now, but that was a way to kind of almost make, even if it wasn't a championship timeline, just that maybe next couple of years or year or two fun.
I don't buy this Anthony Davis stuff. I honestly believe this is all smoke and mirrors. I do not believe for 1 second that LeBron James was holding off to try to steer Anthony Davis to a team that he was interested in joining.
Mm.
I just don't believe it. He's played with Anthony Davis for 6 or 7 years. They won a championship in the bubble. But let's think about the last 3 years that he played with Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis was never there. He was never available. What did Anthony Davis do during those final 3 years with LeBron, where LeBron is that desperate to play with Anthony Davis when there's 449 other players in the NBA? I just don't buy it. I just think that was just smoke and mirrors through the media. I don't believe that LeBron James was that desperate to team up with Anthony Davis. For what? Just like I don't believe that he was that desperate to team up with Kyrie Irving. He's already been there. He's done that. I believe that LeBron James wanted to team up with some younger guys that could take the pressure off of him trying to do everything. And that's the Philadelphia 76ers. And that's why I didn't like it with Steph, and I'm concerned with Steph from a different perspective than you are. I'm concerned that Steph Curry, who missed 29 games last year with the knee injury, we have to remember this. What does the number one skill that Steph Curry have outside of shooting is it's him being elusive, right? And when you start to have those knee injuries and you can't shake and bake and you can't be elusive and you're expected to be the number one option on a team, it's going to be really tough. You think about how shots are going to be created. There's no one on Golden State's team that's going to be able to create shots for Steph. I'm concerned with Steph from that perspective. From the Golden State lens, I'm not too worried, Josh, because we do this all the time with players, right? We think that the NBA continues to move on. Teams continue to move on. Chicago has moved on without Michael Jordan, even though they haven't moved on successfully, but they moved on. They had the Derrick Rose era, and Michael Jordan was quickly forgotten about. So I think there's an era beyond um, the Steph Curry area there in Golden State that these franchises, they just move on, and that's why I would not be surprised to see him move this season to a contender before the trade deadline. Don't be shocked. You heard it here on the crossover first.
We will see, and we'll give you the credit. I love that you're still doing bold predictions after we kind of almost, not intentionally retired that segment early in the season. Maybe we'll bring that back for the new season. But the last thing I sort of put on our, almost mini agenda, Drew, was this Spencer Jones deal, and not necessarily because Spencer Jones is a guy that is like a splashy headline name or anything, but more because it did seem like a little bit of like a needly move from Sam Presti, pressuring Denver into this timeline. And I'm more interested to think about what Denver potentially do next. There is Peyton Watson still kind of hovering out there in limbo. There's been sort of all kinds of smoke and mirrors the last few days where Peyton Watson, it was briefed that he was considering playing on the qualifying offer next season, but then the trouble is with that for Denver is he be an unrestricted free agent in the season after, and I'm not sure you want a guy that young who continues to develop season on season, and we saw when everybody was injured on Denver last season just how good this guy can be when he's the main option on a bad team basically. He's gonna have his stock continue to go up, especially if a couple of other constituent parts in Denver are going to continue to fall apart there, really, in terms of Christian Brown's potentially bad contract, in terms of Aaron Gordon's health issues as well. I'm particularly interested in the Peyton Watson stuff as a Clippers fan, because it seems like the Clippers are one of the front runners for Peyton Watson in terms of a sign and trade potential, and I think the Clippers have assets to get that done as well now, with a couple of those draft picks that are on the board, with guys that are older that can contribute to winning basketball, like Chris Dunn or Derek Jones Jr. There's Benedict Mathurin also hovering in the ether for the LA Clippers there as well. I'm not sure if he'd be a trade pick in this per se, because I just think Denver are going to have to take on less salary than what they kind of pay Peyton Watson in order to get this sign and trade done. But I'm just intrigued to see what Denver do next. It's another team that have the massive talents of Nikola Jokic, and I would still throw Jamal Murray into like the top level of talent in the NBA, if not just the kind of level below. I think Jamal Murray is that good and can be the best guy, especially down in clutch time on most NBA teams. But I don't know. I'm starting to get a little bit worried. Maybe it's just the show where I express my worries to you, Drew, and you make me feel better about the whole thing. But yeah, I'm a little bit worried about the Denver Nuggets and what they do next, unless they just decide, you know what, second apron, who cares? We're going to be the one team that bucks the trend and decides that we don't care, and we'll pay the fines and we'll give away the draft picks because we want to keep our championship window open here.
Yeah, you can afford to do that if you can guarantee yourself that you are a championship caliber team. I look at Denver. I'm not so sure. They're a team that was pretty stagnant this offseason, and their hand was forced into Spencer Jones, and a guy that shot 50% in the playoffs from three, that came up through the G League is, I love what OKC did there, forcing their hand, but they had to sign him back because the deal for what he provides is very low. What is it, 14 million? But then it put them in a very difficult situation with Peyton Watson, which right now they've offered 5 years, 70 million. And if you're Peyton Watson, you got to be looking at that and like kissing my teeth, because I'm looking at my teammate Christian Braun and I'm like, I'm sizing him up and I'm like, I'm sorry, buddy, but if I'm not better than you, we looking eye to eye, and Christian Braun is on 125. So there's no way that I'm signing that if I'm Peyton Watson. These teams are very far apart in negotiations, which you got to think that a sign and trade is coming, because if you're Denver, I don't think you can afford to go in that second apron because your team isn't good enough to compete. Right now, you're not better than San Antonio. You're not better than OKC. So therefore, I can't afford to go into the penalties that the second apron brings you, which just tells you about this new NBA is that things are changing fast. You have to continually evolve your roster. You can't stay the same because you will get passed up quick. And this is almost why, for a team like San Antonio, it's easy to say, oh, this team is young. They'll be back. They don't need it right now. The Knicks probably need it more. These windows don't last forever. And even though you have Wemby, Denver had Jokic as well, and now they haven't gotten back to the promised land. So, you have to continue to look at ways to continue to evolve your roster and get better because now all of a sudden the NBA looks completely different than what it did when we first started this podcast, right? There are many more um, options at the table when you talk about championship caliber teams compared to what we had last year. Let alone that now you're going to be getting pushed by these teams when you thought you rolled into Washington on a Tuesday night. You could just kind of have one eye half open because you know you were going to roll them over. Now you got to bring your A game to every city in the NBA, probably besides Sacramento.
Probably besides Sacramento, indeed. I don't know if you've ever been on Spotrac, by the way, Drew. Spotrac.
I have not.
I presume that's how you spell it. And like looked at the salary cap tables. I was just looking at it there for Denver and kind of like almost wondering what moves can happen. I scrolled down to the cap hold, and it's so funny some of the names you see in the cap hold that were clearly like waiving stretches that were executed years ago. Richard Jefferson, at 46 years of age, is still being paid by the Denver Nuggets, according to
One.
Spotrac. So
Okay.
yeah, even though he's getting that TV bag, he's still apparently making 2.4 million this upcoming season until 29-30. So yeah, there's
Well,
many
that's
more
why he
years
can
of him still
afford
getting
to take
paid.
a helicopter to Scotland for that Cleveland Cavalier 10-year anniversary because they lived it up big there.
Absolutely, yeah. These NBA players are paid differently, but you mentioned there back to the start of this season, of course, when crossover the pond all started, and now Drew is staring into the void of the NBA off season, where when we left Vegas, we were talking about we'd probably jump on to record something when LeBron James' decision was done. I don't know about you, and we can do this admin on air. I don't really see a kind of natural reason to record again until probably kind of training camp time now on crossover the pond. So I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you for everyone for the support this season. We've actually had a crazy little influx of support from one corner of the globe recently because we interviewed guard Jan Martinez. For the
Oh
Cleveland
man,
Cavaliers at Summer League, the Costa Rican prospect there, and Costa Rica has come out in their droves to show us love on the crossover the pond
yes they have.
Instagram. The post, I should have got it up live, but the post was sat on like 20,000 views when I last looked at it. It's gone absolutely crazy. So if you are listening to this from Costa Rica, hola, thank you for joining us. 29.1k we're on now, so thank you very much to Costa Rica
That's
for
incredible.
joining us on Crossover the Pond. That's what this is all about. Basketball is a
Yeah.
global game, and of course, for us here in the UK, or when Drew eventually gets back to the UK, if he ever does come home, maybe he's going to enjoy that Texas sunshine a little bit too much. We want to connect all corners of the globe behind this sport of basketball, but especially with the best league in the world for basketball, the NBA. And with that being said, all that's left for me to do is to swing the rock over to Drew for potentially one last time for a good few weeks or months now and say, Drew, lead us out, my friend.
Yeah, Josh, I echo that. It's been an incredible year. Really want to thank yourself. People don't know behind the scenes, you're the one that's chopping this up, getting it out on socials, which, the editing process for anything is it takes a lot of time. So I just want to thank you on record for everything that you do for us here on the podcast and just the way that we started this thing from absolutely nothing to how we finish it was just poetic justice out there in Vegas, and to finish the season with a pretty viral moment for us. 29,000 is a lot for us. To get that momentum, and even if we just have one listener that comes from Costa Rica, let me get that correct, for the next season, it's just a win in our books. And so we're looking forward to starting the new season with maybe one more ear, one more eyeball than what we had to start last season, and we're okay with that. So we do this as this is our passion project. We do this because we love the NBA and we want to bring our thoughts to you guys that don't have the time to keep up with it. But just know in year two, we're coming back bigger and better and more knowledgeable than ever. So thank you all for joining us on this ride. Make sure you subscribe, like, stay in the loop, stay in the know for when we come back and do it again for season two, which will be here before you know it. Until then, have a great off season, guys. We'll see you guys next season. Peace out.